What did Yuval say that was so bad?
Yuval, he don't know what nuance is. He don't know what a different perspective is. That has tunnel vision.
I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this, and I'm being so for real. Yuval is a white man. The quicker y'all understand that, the quicker you'll understand his actions.
He just keeps attributing his blind spots to being a white man. He doesn't mention the fact that he was raised as a Zionist at all. And I'm not saying that he wasn't being sincere, but how do you leave that out?
Not only have I acknowledged that I've fucked up, but in acknowledging that I fucked up, I also fucked up.
So in today's video, we're going to be covering a controversy from TikTok, which is being dubbed the Yuval controversy. Man effed up so bad, he had to make 2 different apology videos. Now, this video is going to be a very long one because there is so much we are going to be looking at. So without further ado, let's get right into it. It all started when this sister who goes by the name Maddie Swan on TikTok made this video.
People treat the Holocaust as if it's like the worst thing that ever happened in human history. And
you have no idea how much I love having this conversation. Let's have this conversation, because a lot of people don't understand that certain things are considered genocide that we live through every single day. The reason why most people think that the is the worst tragedy to ever happen to humanity in the modern era is because Israel paid for that to be the reality. Because the numbers just factually aren't there. You know what I mean? Not to be, but the reality is with humans and power, stuff happens all the time. There's a reason why our frame of reference in the Western world uses the as the worst tragedy to happen to humankind in the modern era. When, as if you go back, go click the, I tagged the person down below and watch that full video. The scale of slavery is absolutely insane when you try to put that in perspective. So let me try. Also, hi, my name is Madison, the creator behind the Madison channel. I have a podcast called Bloodstained where I talk about history through the lens of true crime. Season 1 is all about slavery. I know it's sad, but it's important information. Hit the link in the bio to listen or watch or subscribe to my YouTube channel and check it out. Boom. I will never forget that, and I say this every chance I get, I will never forget when I realized that slavery was happening on both coasts of Africa at the same time. The Arab slave trade was happening in East Africa, and the transatlantic slave trade was happening in West Africa on the West Coast, and they were funneling millions of people at the same fucking time outside of the continent of Africa to work and do forced labor in other regions, okay? This is important to understand because the way we are taught history as a tool of indoctrination, but not a tool of truth. So we learn about things in a very linear sense and not a circular, holistic sense that's thematic. When you learn about things in a linear way, it individualizes a situation. So when we learn about slavery, we're just thinking about the transatlantic slave trade. But as we are living through right now, we know that there's many history-making things that happen in a single moment, at a single time, at the same damn time. So I will never forget when I learned that the Arab slave trade both predated, it started in the 7th century, predated the transatlantic slave trade, and postdated the transatlantic slave trade. It ended in the 60s. Yeah. Some say it's still going on because of how the labor, you know, the not the forced labor, but you know, the domestic labor routes that Africans go to outside of the country to make money to send back home are very similar to the slave routes back in the day in terms of the East African slave trade. But that's a conversation for another day. If you want more tea on that, again, go to my YouTube video, go to my podcast episode about this. It's podcast episode 0. But we have to understand that we have Both of these slave trades were responsible for upwards of 20 million people being forced into labor, not to mention all the people that died on their journey, which is not really calculated because, of course, we weren't thought of as human beings to be worth calculating except for someone's bottom line. So at the end of the day, we still are estimating the true scope of loss when it comes to the slave trade. I say all of this to say, right? Imagine if we went to school and you learned about the theme of genocide and not just the how. And imagine how important that would be for you to understand the patterns of genocide, how it happens. Is it economic distress that leads to genocide? And how do they prepare people to target a group of people to completely annihilate? What is the marketing for genocide? What are the patterns leading up to genocide? What are the conditions that make genocide possible? So many things would fit under that theme. You would see residential schools under that theme. You would see reservations under that theme. You would see redlining under that theme. You would see police brutality under that theme. You would see food deserts under that theme. You would see everything under that theme. But the reality is, if they did things thematically, it would build solidarity amongst people who are marginalized by Western society. So instead, they teach things linearly instead of thematically in order to individualize these problems so they can have the space to skew the in-between. But the reality is, there is a reason why you are taught in the Western world that the Holocaust is the worst thing that ever happened in modern time. It was terrible, yes, but it was not the only genocide that happened in the modern times. It wasn't even the one with the biggest body count, if we're keeping it a bean. So, yeah.
Then Yuval, who is a pew, please bear with me, I'm censoring because we know how YouTube can be. And also I'm mentioning this because it is relevant to the conversation. So he made a video responding to her video and he went viral because of this. He got himself into a controversy because he minimalized all the atrocities, including the transatlantic slave trade. I came pretty late to this controversy, right? I found out about it, or heard about it rather, when the video was already taken down from his page. So I personally did not get to see the original video myself, and that was very annoying for me because I really wanted to hear what he said and make a video on it. But thankfully, this sister by the name Naomi Locks on TikTok was able to find the video. So she made a video where she reiterated what he allegedly said in his video.
What did Yuval say that was so bad? This question sent me to the greatest intellectual rabbit hole I've ever been in. His original video is nowhere to be found on TikTok because I'm pretty sure he's actively working to make sure it doesn't get reposted. However, because of this beautiful person, I got the video and it's worse than I could have ever anticipated, so let me break it down for y'all. It started off with this woman named Madison who made a video explaining why people might view the as the worst atrocity to happen to mankind. It's because of the way Americans teach history. Not only are things purposely kept out, but purposely put in. She made one minute point about how Israel paid the US for the to be taught in schools, and it's one of the only atrocities that are taught, even though there are other atrocities that are still happening till this day, or other atrocities in history that can be considered numerically worse than the Holocaust in terms of the death toll. So Yuval decides to clip that one point and frame it as if Madison was being anti and minimizing the Holocaust. These are the highlights of his video word for word. I'm not going to post it because I'm pretty sure he'll get it taken down. He says that you have to be willfully detached from reality to believe that the only reason is taken seriously is because Israel paid for it. She literally did not say that Israel paying for it was the only reason. That was literally just one reason that she listed in the entire video. But let's move on. And he goes on to say, I think it's strange to say that anything is the worst thing to happen in human history because I think it's bizarre to rank tragedies. Then he immediately contradicts himself by saying, however, I do think there are things that make the Holocaust uniquely horrifying even with the context of the history of genocide. So then he begins to list the reasons why he thinks the is the worst atrocity in the world. He literally says bar for bar that the transatlantic slave trade took place over the course of 250 years. Of course, the death toll is going to pale in comparison. He's just saying stuff at this point. But remember, the Holocaust happened in only 4 years. That's it. And 6 million were unalive, not including the 5 million non that died during the Holocaust. You're going to struggle to find that kind of rate almost anywhere else in the history of the world. Okay, got it. So we can't take into account the death toll. However, we can take into account the rate at which it happened. Sounds hypocritical to me, but I digress. What makes the Nazis so uniquely horrifying is that they industrialized the process of unaliving in such a systematic and efficient way that has never been seen before or since. Oh, really? Goes on to say that none of these deaths were incidental. Nobody died just as a byproduct of some disease spreading through a community. Yuval, are you seriously downplaying biological warfare? The Nazis created the blueprint for extermination. It's almost certain the most effective G-side in human history. Keep in mind, these are still his words, not mine. It's also something uniquely sadistic about the motivations behind the it wasn't under the guise of economic reason. It wasn't let's enslave the to get free labor. It wasn't for territorial advantage. It wasn't we want your land and we'll unalive you in the process to get it. It wasn't motivated by barbarism.
I cannot help but feel like the reason why he allegedly says that what they did was not motivated by barbarism because the people who did it were whites. Because there is no way in hell anybody will look at what they did and say, no, that's not barbaric. But he's not using that term because they are, and we know that, tend to only like to keep that term barbaric for non-white people. Because like, what do you mean it wasn't motivated by barbarism or they weren't barbaric? Like, can we be so for real? Please.
It wasn't motivated by barbarism, by apathy, not even greed. It was nothing other than pure vitriolic hatred. I'm pretty sure what the Nazis did was very barbaric, territorial, and motivated by greed. But what do I know? I'm just a black girl. He said that the reason why the was taken so seriously is not only because it happened within a civilized society or modern world, but Germany specifically was seen as a peak of civilization globally.
By who? Germany was seen... Bruh, who was seeing Germany as the peak of civilization? Since when? Who? What people? Show them to me. Like, I really want to see these people. The reason why people were looking at it crazy is because it's crazy that it was happening. The reason why I had to stop is because it was barbaric. Like, calling these people civilized while they were doing that is insane. That's not being civil.
They led the world in scientific discoveries. They were seen to have some of the greatest philosophers and thinkers in the world. That is the reason we regard the so severely. It's because there was a global reckoning that society was not enough. That even the highest forms of sophistication and education was not enough to stop millions of people from turning into monsters. People could not explain this away by saying that it was just barbarism or savagery, because it wasn't. This was heavily organized.
So when your barbaric acts are well organized, your barbaric acts stop being barbaric acts. Oh my goodness, the things I've heard in this my short time here on earth. The mental gymnastics, the hoops these people be jumping just so they don't call this spade the effing spade that it is. It's crazy.
These points about Germany being this highly sophisticated society is the most colonizer I've ever heard. Then he ends the video with saying how he hates videos like this in reference to Madison's video because they remind him of how the happened in the first place. Because they're always guided as intellectualism, then you look at their comment section and he proceeds to show all these comments with little to no likes that were being anti-Semitic. Madison never endorsed these comments. She did not like them, and her video was not anti-Semitic at all.
Like, the way I hate how when it comes to these conversations, like, people cannot even have them and even speak facts anymore because you're just going to be tagged anti-Semitic. Like, it's crazy. It's insane.
He was simply explaining why one atrocity is top more than the other, and he literally took so much offense to it. Took it as her ranking tragedies, which she didn't do at all. Then proceeded to start ranking tragedies. Anyways, that's it. That's all. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments.
Germany specifically was seen as the peak of civilization globally.
Who said that? Who said that? When you say the whole globe looked at Germany as the peak of civilization, who the fuck is he talking about? Listen, everybody's been giving the information, education so nicely. I'm just saying this shit straight. Wasn't nobody saying that shit, eh? Except that little area, Germany, Europe, and stuff. That was the only place y'all was just shirking each other, just shirking, okay? Just looking at each other like, yeah, I like shit, oh yeah, I like shit. That's how it was going, okay? Because the rest of the globe wasn't doing that shit, okay? The Far East was looking at that area, Europe is fucking barbaric, okay? It was dogs. Okay, and the global south, the view, the point of view was these fucking monsters from introduction. Okay, so you say becoming monsters. Other people already had that worldview. By the way, Germany and the people's acting towards them. Okay, boo. So let's get this shit straight. When you say the rest of the world, the globe, you're not talking about everybody else. You having a straight tunnel view. The little circle jerk team in Europe. That's who you're talking about. It was not the globe. So let's get this shit straight. You are causing erasure of other people's points of view, worldview. And I'll say also West Asia was also on it. Asia was also looking too. Everybody's not looking at Europe like it was civilized. Everybody's not looking at Germany and Europe like they was civilized, okay? From jump, you understand, including West Asia, Africa, everybody was saying, why y'all get just fucking bad, okay? Everybody was saying, why shit, okay? From the Far East to the West Asia to the Africa, even over to the Native Americans, okay? Everybody was asking y'all, where's your soap and your wash rag? So that we talking, it's not just black people saying this shit, it's not brand new. Everybody was saying that shit back then. They said the little sugar jerk team, okay? They was smelling each other and see, I know, you know, your senses go after a while after you smell some, go after smell after a while. You said you don't even smell that shit no more, okay? But everybody else could smell. That whole area, Europe, Germany, all them, they had to violence people across the globe to like their Understand how sucky your shit got to be. To have to unalive, genocide, grape, and all over the globe, okay? People to like your shit, that means your shit suck, babe. That's what that means. That means the Germany ain't fucking top tier. Nobody's saying that. When you have to go and do that. This civilized, the classical music and the peak of science. This is some bold, ahistorical. The classical music formed from elements of African music and Far East music put together in East Asia and put together and then included the notes. You got to do the notes like this. If you don't do it like this, it's not true music. Taking the soul and the spirit out of that shit, you call it top tier. That's the tier. Nobody's saying that except them, okay? Nobody's saying that just that little area was saying the circle jerking, okay? And the sciences he's talking about, that the scientists, okay, that went to Africa and stole the science, the philosophies, psychologies, all of those things, went into the continent, even the Far East, and stole their shit, and then came up with a whole bunch of everybody's stuff up. So everybody and picked it themselves and said, this is the top tier. And we're looking at like, that's not what Ubuntu, that's not what we didn't say treat everybody like you want to be treated. We said treat everybody how they want to be treated. Y'all fuck that shit up. Then y'all went to the Far East and started up too. Even your philosophy, okay, you took all the way from all the libraries that we had far back before any of it happened. Even your psychology, Maslow was this hierarchy of needs over there with the Native Americans, sitting all day trying to find out here that shit all reversed. First had the hierarchy of needs reversed when he was sitting with the Native Americans. The worldview naturally without violence was looking like this is some dog shit, pile of shit. Thieves and robbers and like I said, everybody around was looking at that area as soon as they came in like, wash your ass. They had to violence people. Violence people would be like, yeah, you better say I smell good, don't say I stink, say I smell good. We're like, okay, fine, you smell like roses and and then they'd be like, okay, cool. And they'd be like, you don't even understand. Roses smell like doo-doo. See, we was always saying this. We was always saying this peak of civilization, this circle jerk team. So when you say the globe view, that's a tunnel view. And you're including yourself in that tunnel, erasing the other world views, erasure, all of the things that you're saying about, okay, how did this happen? It happened because it was happening. Everybody's saying it's so spectacular because it never happened. We don't understand it never happened before. How did this happen? This happened. That's exactly how it happened because you saying it never happened before when it actually did. And it was ignored. Okay, and that's actually the point some people are trying to make, is that when you ignore principles and patterns of things, one day it's gonna knock on your door and you're not gonna recognize that it was ignored because it was already happening. It was already happening, and they're looking and watching and saying, I don't give a okay? It's happening in Namibia. It was happening in the scramble of Africa. It was happening in America, okay? And we talk about, trigger warning, burning bodies. Negroes were hanging from trees, burnt for everybody to see. Do you know there was a degree, there was a time and period during the okay, where they were pew-pewing. They were pew-pewing people until the soldiers started reporting that it was not good for their mental state to watch bodies that actually look like them fall like that. And they developed a different system to hide that so they didn't have to see that. But you know what? They didn't have to do that. They had to do that in America. They were still hanging bodies and burning it for picnics and watching it burn for everybody to see out in the open. Because once again, another point, it's also how you view the bodies that are being harmed with disregard. It don't trigger your humanity to be like, maybe we should not have the body hanging in a tree. And the hit man, okay, that was up there doing all that stuff, getting all his ideas that was happening in America. It was happening, Jim Crow, system that was never systemized. It was happening, it was system. He took that from there when it was happening, and the circle jerk team didn't care. Circle jerk team didn't care. So like I said, I don't know what this worldview is that you're talking about, is how you view the bodies that are being harmed, especially if those bodies are darker than you. Because most of the time, I want you to know, all the thing happened, it was those black and brown bodies, it was already done to. But then, again, this is your worldview. And you went like this. And so, once again, the peak of civilization, that's till this day, right? Y'all went and saw the mud houses and the circles and stuff. Y'all still calling that shit uncivilized. Well, you're still doing it to this day, calling Africa uncivilized and the mud houses and stuff. While your science, all of a sudden, it's saying, oh, that's actually really advanced, the way that the air circulates and insulates and stuff like that. But no, the civilization was to put us in box houses with air conditioning and shit, and say, go inside the box house with air conditioning and use the electricity and stuff. Have you been outside? Y'all been outside? The UV was 10 yesterday. The UV was 10. Then again, when you violence people to convince them that your circle jerk of civilization is correct, that's how you end up here. That's how we end up like this. Anyways, everybody continue to give the information, the education so nicely. I just want people to know that some people are foolish. The whole globe was not looking at Germany and Europe as the peak of civilization. No, from the Far East to West Asia, Africa, all the way to Turtle Island. Everybody was asking y'all, where the soap and your washcloth? Okay, wash your ass. Everybody was saying this. Okay, so you need to not erase and deny that view, that world viewpoint at the end of the day. Okay, have a nice day. Okay,
I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this, and I'm being so for real. Yuval is a white man. The quicker y'all understand that, the quicker you'll understand his actions. Because trying to play Atrocity Olympics with black people, marginalized people, people from the global south, you will never win. Your quote unquote view of a civilized society and tragedies happening within that civilized society or the civilized world is a joke to all of us. You know why? Because the original sin that is slavery, colonialism, King Leopold in the Congo, or what about the fact that, 20 million Russians died during the Holocaust? Is that not all the modern world? What about the Rwandan genocide? What about that? Is that not the modern civilized world? That's the thing. White people, white men will forever prioritize broken white bodies and tragedies that happen to white people. And so the rest of us should never be shocked, because as people of the global south or marginalized, people, we understand that all of these sins coexisted in quote unquote this civilized world that we all live in. Whether your country was colonized, whether it was a Rwandan, like, none of this is new to us, but it's clearly new to him because he's only been taught to prioritize white tragedy. So let's not be shocked here. I think instead of just going, oop, he opened his mouth and blabbered too quick, but you win some, you lose some. Personally, me, no white man's gonna tell me about atrocities, okay? Thank you.
Very interesting how these people exist in their bubble. Everything about this life somehow to them seems to begin and end with only what happens to them, like in that bubble. Like worldview, where, because like for real, what world is to them people, it's like very little again, the bubble. Reminds me of when people, artists be going on world concerts and you look at the places that they go to. It's not a world concert if you do not go to every part in the world. It's like the perception of what world is slowly being warped to mean only like a particular part of the world. Only a particular part of the world is seen as the world. And the rest of us, we're just like, I don't even know what we are, where we are at this point.
Do you know why black people don't play the Oppression Olympics game, despite what y'all think? Because even after going band for band, comparing the atrocities that have happened to us, and talking about the death toll over the years, we would win nothing. We wouldn't get a consolation prize, a golden sticker, reparations. We would literally just be told to be grateful we're alive. We get gaslit, we get death threats, we get racial slurs.
And we'll be told to get over it. It's in the past. That didn't even happen when you were alive. But them folks can always talk about it though, and nobody tells them that. Nobody tells them to get over it. Nobody tells them, oh, it did not happen when you were alive, so it's like invalid. It's not that big of a deal. But when it's black people talking about their, atrocities that they were forced to live through, their ancestors were forced to live through, all of a sudden it's like, get over it. It didn't happen to you. Stop nagging. Stop playing the victim. Stop, the victim mentality. Pick yourselves up by the bootstraps. But then folks still get reparations. Still. Didn't happen to them though, and it's 2024. Nobody's telling them none of that. The double standards, I really can't.
So we don't really do it. The elephant in the room that I feel has always existed is the comparison of the Atlantic slave trade and the European world has done its most to try to pretend as though the is the most important and horrific thing that has ever happened to anyone in the entire world. And if you ever say anything otherwise, you are an anti-Semitic piece of trash, essentially. That's at least the vibe that I got growing up. The has literally been branded as the...
Even though there were like G-sides that happened before the... If we want to start listing, we'll not go come up for here today. But just to mention a few, the Herero G-side, the G-sides that happened, that was done to the Herero people of Namibia. This same G-side, by the way, was spearheaded, done, carried out by the Germans, the same Germans that, according to Yuval in his alleged video, were civilized people, not barbarians. The Congolese that was spearheaded by, carried out by, supervised by Leopold II of Belgium, where 15 million Congolese were unalived. What they went through before they actually were unalived. The things that were done to their bodies, how they were mutilated, men, women, and children. Let's not get into the arrow warding. Or should we talk about the number of African people that died during the transatlantic slave trade? I don't really see many people call this a genocide. But if we want to be for real, that's what it is. It was and chattel slavery, like, together, that's what happened. And no, we are not going to be forgetting the Arab Islamic slave trade in this video. I refuse for that slave trade to continue to go under the radar like it never happened. The Arab Islamic slave trade was a G-side as well, and we need to talk about that more.
how we decide who knows what, when they know it, and how they know.
This right here is one of the main points that people engaging with Maddie's video are actively ignoring. And I think that is very dangerous. So much so that it is going to be the detriment to those of us living in the global north. Let's take Yuval's response to Maddie's video as an example, right? Yuval gives us a breakdown as to why the was such a prolific iteration of human atrocity, right? And one of the examples that he gives is the fact that Germany was so systemically efficient at eradicating the people. This is why the Holocaust stands apart. And yet you can tell in his rhetoric that there is no acknowledgement of the fact that we are taught only that Germany was efficient. We are not taught how Germany became efficient. We are not taught how Germany reached that level of evil. And I don't think that's by accident. The first iteration of German concentration camps were not invented by Smotsy Germany, nor were they first enacted within the borders of Germany. In 1908, the German Empire invaded Namibia, a peninsula of Namibia, which would later be called Death Island. And it was called Death Island because the German Empire created concentration camps to eradicate the Herero and Namaqua people. So that atrocity, that is directly linked to the... And yet, no one knows that history, let alone that it's connected. There are multiple entities, both private, non-governmental, and governmental entities, whose interests converge when it comes to cultivating an ignorance for the people living in the global north. If we were to understand the with a less westernized and compartmentalized understanding and a more globalized understanding, I think we would learn, one, that atrocity did not happen in isolation. It was an atrocity that was a part of a network of atrocities enacted by the same entities. And those entities are still alive and kicking, cultivating new atrocities that are also very much connected. And not only would we learn that, but we would also learn how easy it is for nations in the global north to enact the terroristic policies that they push on the global south inward. How easy it is for the terrorism of colonization to be enacted against their very own citizens. If we were to have that learning, then we would be able to see the red flags, the precursors. We might go around and be able to be proactive against rather than reactive and woefully ill-equipped at stopping them or repairing their harm. Who gets to teach this history and what parts of the history they get to teach is very important. It's very much propagandized, and there's a reason for that. And it is the cause for a lot of the disconnect. It's the cause for a lot of reasons why people cannot see the connection between Palestine, West New Guinea, Congo, Kashmir, so on and so forth. All of these atrocities are connected. They're not happening in a vacuum. But we can't understand that concept if we're not taught it. We can't understand that concept if what we are taught is a propagandized version of actual history. And I feel like we owe it to the victims of these we owe it to the victims of these atrocities to, at the very least, try to deconstruct our conditioning so that we can at least acknowledge their existence, yo.
You know, when we're talking about right now, we talk about the Congolese or the Sudanese. Everybody always has something to say about how it's not a, even though the death toll of those have accounted for far more than the death toll of the alone. Whether it's the Congolese now or the Congolese back with King Leopold. But again, going band for band does nothing because nobody actually gives a shit about millions of African people dying. People don't care about black people. So, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million? Who gives a f-? The Atlantic slave trade is by far, historically, objectively, with no bias, the worst thing that has ever happened in the entire history of the world of recorded human history because of how disgustingly atrocious it was. It was literally the systemic subjugation of African people throughout the diaspora and the of them. Because in order to enslave them, you have to subjugate them and you have to instill the idea of fear and death. Not to mention that they didn't care if we lived or died any fucking ways. So it really didn't matter. I saw this one TikTok. I don't remember the user. If you do, comment it. And I don't remember the country. If you do, where they were showing a historical building. It was, made of stone. And now they use it to remind people of the atrocities happening during the Atlantic slave trade.
I think if I were to take a guess, I would say the country he's talking about or wanting to reference in this video, I would say it's probably high chance Ghana or maybe Senegal. It's this building, it's white, it's like a story building. Above is a church, that's where they used to worship, right, and pray every Sunday. And below was the room, like a basement where they kept African people that they had captured. There's like little to no window, it's dark, they were being like barely fed, and they had like places outside, chains where they show you spots where the captured woman who is being like maybe difficult to them and not wanting to break and just be mellow, so they'll keep her there chained for like a couple of days. Both sun, rain, everything would be, just directly hitting her. She'll just be there under the elements, not getting fed, not giving water. And after a while, when she's like weak and no longer, active, can no longer fight, they will take her upstairs where she would be rewarded. They keep the men and the women separate, and the enslavers would, at any point in time, when they feel like it, just come point at any woman they want, and then they'll take her up and go do with her whatever they wanted. And at the place where the men are locked up, what they used to do is they would not feed these people. They were not really giving them food, right? The men and the women, they were not really giving them food. But once it's time to give food, the entire thing is disgusting. But like what they do with the food is like even more sad. It's painful. These men have been starving for days. Now they are ready to give them food or decide to give them food, and they will come with just like a handful of food and toss the food into the dungeon. And they bring this little amount of food for the singular reason that they want these men to fight for the food. They want to watch these men fight for the food. So they will throw the food into the dungeon, and these hungry men would, of course, fight. They will start fighting each other for the food. I'm sorry I deviated a little bit, but I really wanted to share this. Yeah, I think it's Ghana or Senegal he's talking about.
They essentially shoved black people into those, stone rooms and closed the doors and would wait until the ship came to take more black people back across the ocean. And during that wait, they just were shoved in that room and literally set to rot. But because of the idea of gas chambers and the Nazi regime, there's something about that and the way in which it's taught in the American public education system and throughout various remembrance organizations that make people think, this is just by far 10 times worse than anything black people have ever experienced ever, when it is very similar. Very similar. The only difference is it actually happened to more black people for hundreds of years. Something that took several decades, mind you. It was an atrocious event. The Holocaust is horrible. It happened to black people far before that ever happened. And nobody cared. And nobody gave a till now, and nobody got reparations. Y'all don't teach it in the history books, and you actively tell black people to shut up and forget about it. So when we do this, I just have to laugh. I have to laugh when people like Yuval, who already knew he wasn't where he needed to be when it came to, various things. I still got that vibe, but it is what it is. It just does not surprise me because I can tell. I can tell when people concern themselves with worldly affairs, but leave out black people. I can always tell. As a black person, I can tell. We usually can tell. Because we're always afterthought. We're always being told why, our uncivilized and dirty, countries don't matter. Not saying that's what he said. I don't actually know what he said because the video is deleted and I haven't found an original, full-length video. But it sounded like he said some things that were very... And to that I say, I'm not surprised. The sooner y'all take your favorite content creators off a fucking pedestal and hear them for what they say, not what you want to hear, maybe we can move this conversation forward. Me personally, I'm done pretending as though the Atlantic slave trade and slavery is not and has not been ever the worst thing ever, and I feel as though growing up, when you even implied that, people would tell you otherwise. No, it was!
So let me see if I got this correct. So basically, a creator made a video talking about why the is so highlighted, and essentially saying that people just don't care about black and brown people as much as they do white individuals, which is why it's always like put in our face, shoved in our face, when other has happened, and other shit has happened to larger degrees to other populations of people. Basically, it's because of race. So Yuval thought it was a good idea to stitch her video and continue can't make this up and continue to push those racist ideology. He like proved her fucking shit. I ain't got no gas in here. 80 miles till empty is crazy. Get here and proved her point. Proved her goddamn point. And a mother, I feel like every single time that mother has one of his yap sessions, he uses the word nuance. And if he don't use the word nuance, I honestly wouldn't be surprised because he don't know what that is. He don't know what nuance is. He don't know what a different perspective is. That has tunnel vision. You see I'm sweaty, it's because I'm hot and I got my air out so I can make sure that y'all actually hear what I'm saying. And a lot of people are saying they're disappointed, but they're not surprised. I'm not disappointed. Grown man, bro, I'm not finna be disappointed in no grown man. You get on this app, you're always running your goddamn mouth. You're obviously very smart. You're very intelligent. You articulate your points, your opinions, and the facts that you present in a very, very great, knowledgeable, and confident way, okay? He's a smart mother. So why is he still so goddamn dumb? That's what annoys me. I'm not disappointed in no grown man. I'm mad as like, I'm literally like fuming right now. Oh my god, the fucking mouth, y'all, because it's literally like you can't make that up. And I don't know if he's going to backpedal, but if he needs to, like, I'm not even joking, y'all. He needs to go back on a lot of that he said. He needs to reflect on the language that he was using. Sophisticated, educated, civilized. Okay, this is the first time that all of these millions of people suddenly turned. No, they didn't. Germany was already doing in other places of the world. They were always raped. Y'all, they didn't care though, because the people that were being targeted were brown and black. How did that point go over your smooth head? I don't know. I'm so pissed off.
So now let's get to Yuval's apology, and there's two of them. Let's start with the first one he made.
In addition to these acknowledgements, I would like to try to give your video the response I should have given you originally, because those issues that I mentioned with your framing are still there, and this is a conversation I feel we do need to have. But this time I want to try to have it in such a way where I do not distract from the conversation that you had started originally. Alright, so specifically the sentence that I took issue with was the fact that you said the reason most people believe the to be the worst thing that ever happened is because Israel paid for that to be the reality. This statement very directly implies that there is no legitimate reason to think of the this way other than Israeli lobbying. Now, I initially responded to you by saying, while I do not believe you should call the worse than any other tragic event throughout human history, I do acknowledge that there are very understandable reasons that people do perceive it as such. And then I gave a number of reasons that were not Israeli lobbying. Like that 100-day period that I mentioned 1.5 million people were killed, those were the deadliest 100 days in human history. So if someone were to come up to me and say, I think the Holocaust is the worst thing to have ever happened, I'd go, I get it. I get why you think that, and in no way do I believe that the reason you think that is just because of Israeli lobbying. So by insisting that there is no legitimate reason other than Israeli lobbying, you are thereby minimizing the severity of the because there are many reasons that are not that. I know you're going to say that's not what you intended. I know that's not what you meant. But that is what that statement means. And it was made worse by the fact that you followed that statement up immediately by saying the numbers just aren't there in reference to the specifically. I cannot overstate just how offensive that statement is. I literally had a fight or flight reaction when I heard you say that. And I know I'm not the only one because I saw plenty of other people in your comments pointing out those words specifically.
See, if you are comparing with numbers, I believe it's fair to say that the numbers aren't there. Not because the numbers are not there, because that would be insane to say. I don't think anybody would say that, because like 9 million people is a lot of people. But if you were to compare the numbers of the with other, and I think that's what that creator means.
Sure, I guess for a minute, and then I'm going to sleep. I should have done that an hour ago. But a lot of people are really confused about this, and it's because you're misconstruing her words, and it really highlights the fact that people of color have to explain themselves out the ass just for people to not purposefully misconstrue their words. She did not deny the Holocaust happened, nor did she diminish Jewish suffering. She only said that the numbers are not there to justify the right, because there have been more than one, because a Holocaust is just a synonym for genocide, but that the numbers are not there for the to be considered the peak of all and the worst tragedy to happen in human history. She said that the numbers don't support it being the worst tragedy because it was not the worst as in body count or even bodies per day or even bodies per year. Her entire point and my entire point is that the Jewish is not the pinnacle of all human suffering. It's not the worst. We shouldn't be placing one above all the others as far as importance. There are similarities between all of them, and some of them have higher death counts. But that doesn't mean that the sitting at 6 million is A, the highest, because it's not, and it doesn't mean that it is B, the most important to learn about. That was her point. Yuval tried hard to prove that the Jewish was the worst in terms of how many bodies per day or per month or per year. He tried, but he got the statistics wrong, and I disproved some of those in my videos. But what he also forgot was the statistics of everyone else who died during the entire not C, because that is more specific than saying, because it didn't just happen to Jewish people. But the whole point is that suffering and the has always been placed at the forefront, the prominence of education. So much so that students in Western nations do not learn about other, especially ones that people of our complexion committed in the land that we now live. And especially the other people that the whole entire of World War II affected in Europe alone. I'm not even gonna get into the 3 to 30 million, yes, it's a large range, of Chinese civilians that the Japanese killed. Not even gonna get into that in this. That's for my book.
Remember, this was not just some random throwaway sentence. This was the framing to your entire video. This was your hook. This was the catalyst from which everything else followed. And when we start a video with a statement that severe and flagrantly false, we've now derailed the entire conversation because we've invited crazy conspiracy theorists. It is not a coincidence that I saw so much overtly anti-Semitic and denial rhetoric within your comment section. That was a byproduct of the framing you chose to use. Framing that included phrases that sounded very similar to control the media and the was exaggerated. 2 sentences I saw verbatim in your comments. I know you've apologized for being vague in your wording. I do appreciate that, but you being vague was not my issue. I want to be clear, I actually always knew what you meant when you said Israel paid for it, because I watched the video where you clarified what that statement meant before I ever responded to you. And just the things you said there in my original video, because honestly, it didn't really change anything. In that video, you talked about Israeli lobbying more generally and how it can affect our education system, but then the only example you gave of this happening specifically was of a singular nonprofit. And the one concrete example you had given was changing the phrase illegal settlers in the West Bank to something more innocuous and neutral sounding, which is weird because they asked a question about how is Israel paying to bolster the, and we answered it with an example about settlers in the West Bank, which feels like a weird conflation of Judaism and Zionism. But secondly, it reemphasizes the framing not as here's how the Holocaust is pedestaled because we ignore all of these other tragedies, but rather here's how a specifically group is literally rewriting history in order to bolster an agenda. I'm sorry, framing the severity of the Holocaust as a byproduct of rewriting history is insanely dangerous. This talking point is a little strange to me personally because I was a high school teacher. An uncomfortable number of our students did not even know what the Holocaust was, and the ones who did in no way understood the sheer depravity of it. Their knowledge of the Holocaust was that they had seen the boy in the striped pajamas. So if the idea is that Israeli lobbies are currently trying to influence our education system such that we center the Holocaust much more than it should be, I don't know. They are not doing a very good job.
I don't know if I buy that argument though. You guys will let me know down below in the comment section if you buy it. It's like me saying, oh, you know that situation of when Beyonce did the Who Run the World music video and she invited over to the US those African dancers, I forgot what country they are from, to come over and teach her their choreography that she used in the Who Run the World music video. I read that those African dancers did not know who Beyonce was before they got in contact with her and met her. So him using the boys in the classroom that did not know about the to say, oh, that's like evidence, that to say, oh, this is proof that the Israelis are not lobbying for to be known of by everybody, as she said in her video. It's like me saying that Beyonce's marketers and promoters are not marketing and promoting her well or enough, or at all for that matter, because those African dancers did not know who Beyonce was. That's how it stands to me. My brain did not really accept it. It did not really make sense to me. But then again, that's just me.
Obviously, this is very different if you are from a Jewish community or a community that has a large population. If that's the case, then I'm sure you learned quite a lot about the Holocaust. You might have even had survivors visit your school. And there is a conversation to be had about how people will use the Holocaust to deflect from things like segregation and slavery. There are, of course, plenty of reasons that people think about the Holocaust this severely that don't have anything to do with Israel or its severity, like the fact that the Holocaust is the most well-documented in human history because the Nazis were great record keepers. And of course, it is not lost on me that we also view the victims of the Holocaust more sympathetically because of its proximity to whiteness.
Here we go again with the semantics. What does he mean by their proximity to whiteness? Are these people not white? Or is there something I'm missing here? Please educate me in the comments because, like, hello?
These are conversations we do need to have. We need to talk about why the world at large has seemed to have forgotten about nearly every other gender. But we also need to make sure we are having these conversations in such a way that does not invite anti-Semitism. And I want to be clear, I also recognize that I myself, as well as many other white and creators, need to learn how to respond to instances like this in ways that do not invite other forms of bigotry. I know that's exactly what happened when I first responded to you, which is why, despite everything I still believe, I still want to apologize, because that should not have happened and that was my fault. I just hope that this time I've managed to speak about it in such a way where that does not happen. I hope I've been a little bit more clear this time. I'm going to be honest, this is probably the first TikTok I've ever made where I was not confident in what I wanted to say. In nearly every other video I've ever made on this app, even in instances where I was responding to criticism or places where I was in hot water, I always knew exactly what I wanted to say. But that is not the case here. And I think that's because I feel as if I'm walking such a thin line here. And I point this out only because I think it's important that we recognize just how thin that line is when trying to have these conversations without indirectly harming someone else. Yeah, I think it's something we should all pay attention to because I'm, only just realizing how truly thin it is. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening.
So now let's go to the second apology, because he took this apology video down and then posted another one and had as the cover of this apology video on his feed, on his page on TikTok, written on there, better apology, like this. Let's take a look at the apology.
A lot of my fans still don't think I did anything wrong, which I think is interesting because not only have I acknowledged that I fucked up, but in acknowledging that I fucked up, I also fucked up. Like, I've been rewatching the apology that I uploaded yesterday, and a lot of it is just bad. There's a lot of things that people are rightfully hurt and upset at me for that I just kind of glossed over. Like, why didn't I acknowledge that I minimized the transatlantic slave trade by implying it wasn't as bad because it happened over a longer period? Why didn't I apologize for conflating the Western world with the whole world? Talk about the implications of what it means when I said other happened in far-off corners of the world. How dangerous it could have been to frame the Holocaust as uniquely horrific when every is uniquely horrific in some way. Like, why was it so easy for me to directly call out Madison's actions as enabling anti-Semitism, but not my own for enabling racism, and instead just said that they were weird? And why could I not see this until it was pointed out to me? I've mentioned that a lot of the issues in my first video are a byproduct of the fact that I was immediately triggered and then responded out of emotion when I shouldn't have. But then I had an entire day to calm down and think things through and not respond emotionally, and I did it again. Like, part of that was probably that it was too soon, and even though I didn't realize it, I was still sitting in that exact same headspace, which is why I felt such a strong need to clarify the exact same point. But a huge part of this was probably an immediate instinct to take advantage of my own privilege and not sit in discomfort. Like, I have sat in discomfort plenty of times in my life. I'd like to think that's how I've gotten to the person I am now, but this is the first time I've had to do it publicly, and so my gut instinct was not to. So I'm sorry for the initial harm I caused, the anti-black rhetoric, the lack of real accountability, and doubling down when I did not need to. I've seen a bunch of comments and messages from people saying things like, "Oh my God, Yuval, I understood you the entire time. You were being perfectly clear." It's like, okay, I'm glad you did. But objectively, my words were harmful to a lot of people. I hope this is also an example to others, because I know quite a few people are particularly upset because of who I am. Right? I'm not just the linguistics guy. If you look at a lot of my linguistic videos, you'll notice that a bunch of them are not really about linguistics. They're about how people use language to reinforce classism and racism. I talk about that constantly. A lot of people in my comments have been recommending that I read Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. I've actually already read Caste. It's a great book. I featured it in 2 of my videos. And still, it is from me from which all this came. White people in particular, in our activism, we need to remember that that is not enough to truly unlearn everything. Some blind spots are very, very deep. There are probably still things in this video that I missed or forgot to say, but I am still trying to find them. I am, in like a weird way, thankful that this happened to me because it's opened up a very good discourse in which I have learned quite a bit. I'm gonna tag 2 creators who responded to me with videos that I thought were particularly helpful. That would be thedownballot.org and Himani. I would like to thank the both of you for responding in a way that was very respectful and informational, because you were responding to a video that wasn't. And most of the videos I've seen have been very helpful and respectful, other than, you know, like the memes. I'm not responding to Madison or messaging her directly because towards the end of her last video, she said she did not want to continue a back and forth, so I'm assuming she does not want that. I'm not exactly sure what to do with my last video. You know, I want to make sure I take accountability, but I also worry that if I don't take it down, I'll spread more misinformation and hate, because a lot of the issues that were in my first video have been pointed out to me or in my second. In case I do take it down, I want to be clear. I'm, of course, still incredibly sorry for the amount of hate that I caused Madison by using very aggressive and hateful rhetoric, even if I didn't realize it at the time. All of this has made me think I should revisit how I use this platform, because I'm really disappointed in myself for the things I said and the harm I caused, and I don't ever want to do that again. Also, if you're white and you're about to say, "Apology accepted, Yuval," don't. Like, I didn't do anything to you. No one has to accept my apology, right? Like, what I'm going to do is going to be the same regardless. But, like, you especially, like, the fuck? I've seen a lot of people recommend Industry by Norman Finkelstein. I do like reading, particularly nonfiction. So if you have any other book recommendations, feel free to leave them in the comments. At the very least, this can be a nice learning opportunity for everybody. So yeah, I really am sorry. I know this is all on me. I hope this acknowledges everything in a way that's more appropriate and doesn't cause the same harm. But if it does, I'm always appreciative of the feedback. So thank you.
I just watched Yuval's second apology video and I noticed there's something pretty key missing from it. It's a pretty long video. He just keeps attributing his blind spots to being a white man. He doesn't mention the fact that he was raised as a Zionist at all. And I'm not saying that he wasn't being sincere, but how do you leave that out? Very vague, no mention of the fact that what he was saying and the misinformation that he was spreading and the point of view that he was getting so defensive over is a result of being indoctrinated into Zionism. And I know some people will just be like, oh, it doesn't matter, you're just getting hung up on words. No, it actually really does matter, because that wasn't an example of just some I'm a vague white man issue. The fact that Zionists are raised and indoctrinated to believe that not only they're in constant danger, which is the reason why it is justifiable that the Israeli regime does the things it does, but that anything they go through is so unique that it discounts anything else anybody else goes through. The belief that their pain and that their trauma is so much more important and real that they should get their own state for it. Did black people get their own state? But instead of having a conversation about that and addressing how holding Zionist beliefs leads you to dehumanize others, all of that, the underlying belief system that caused him to make the first video in the first place is completely ignored. And instead it's just a generic, vague, oh, it's my white manness. Trying to have this conversation or an apology without addressing the underlying belief system of Zionism is like trying to have the conversation and an apology without addressing anti-blackness. Like, what?
So I really want to share this video because I feel like these points that she raised, very valid. I've been coming by his videos once in a while on my FYP on TikTok, but I did not really know much about him. I didn't even know he was a Pew to begin with. Not that, I discriminate or say whether or not I watch or support anybody's content based on their religion or whether or not they are Pews, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I did not know. But now with this entire controversy, a lot has been revealed, and he's a Pew, which is fine. Being a Pew is not a problem. It's what kind of Pew are you? What kind of belief system do you hold? How do you feel about people? How do you treat people? And I don't think that's only about Pews. I feel like that's about everybody, whether you're Catholic or Muslim or Pentecostal or black or white or this, that, and the third, or what ethnic group you're part of. I don't think there's anything wrong with being any race or part of any religion or any ethnic group. I don't think that that's wrong. I don't see a problem with that. But when you are part of an extreme group, then there is a problem. Being a Jew is not a problem. Being a Zionist is. Right? So I just want to be clear on where exactly I stand so people don't misunderstand or take my meaning out of context or twist my word. I really want to be clear on it because this is the internet and my nose is running. But with this controversy now, which is being dubbed the Yuval controversy, a lot more has been revealed.
He doesn't mention the fact that he was raised as a Zionist at all.
That's an interesting perspective to look into, like she pointed out, and I want to share it in this video. Yeah, that's basically everything there is to this case, I guess. I know we didn't really talk much about the sister who made the initial video that landed us here, but I want to say in this video that I wish her well. I know she, I can only imagine the amount of hate and racism and anti-blackness she must have had to deal with all through this while when this is happening, and who knows, maybe even till now, right? Because it's a conversation that is still being had on TikTok, at least as at right now that I'm filming this video. So I can only imagine what it has been like for her. But I hope she's okay though. I hope she's fine, and I hope she will be able to get past this. But guys, what are your thoughts? Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.
If you let people get angry and talk long enough, eventually they'll expose who they really are. Because we just watched in real time Yuval get angry at a black woman and in response then turn around and spread anti-black and indigenous bigotry, and then also turn around and then send his 3 million followers to go bully and harass her, knowing full well that the harassment that she would get would most likely be racial. He just didn't care. And the reason why we know he didn't care was because he got upset that people were calling him out, so he made a first apology video where he then again kept on talking and admitted that he knew that they were going to harass her and that he didn't care. And this is even double confirmed because he told Madison in her DMs that he knew his fans were going to harass her. He just didn't care. And for up to me, if I were the TikTok gods, Honestly, you all wouldn't even have a platform anymore because that was a blatant misuse of followers and influence. But he had an emotional response. So what are we supposed to do?
Why does this sound so familiar? I just got caught up in all the Yuval drama because I've been taking my mental health break for, my own reasons. But Black women teach us best. If you let people get angry and talk long enough, they'll eventually expose who they really are. Black women do not get paid enough for teaching us. Go follow, because I just did, these big creators lose their goddamn minds and really start to think that they're infallible.